This is what happens when you're coronavirus lockdown and you're completing all your projects in your garage, and pretty soon you find yourself working on hex clutches. Something that I think most people would tell you just throw it in the garbage, but I do have a Arctic Cat project I'm working on. It's a 76 Jag. So I went online to look for information about the hex clutches. This is the one I rebuilt. I just wanted to go over some of the information that I learned online and share it with some people on YouTube or wherever. I thought it'd be interesting to give this a shot. So first of all, I just wanted to go through the rebuild that I did. It has a hex clutch part number, springs, all that fun stuff right here on this sheet. When I was looking at this project, I thought if I could rebuild it for, you know, a few dollars, that'd be great. So I got bushings, spring, and I did buy a ramp set, which turned out to be the wrong type. But the total cost I'm looking at, you know, with miscellaneous, about $78 to get this clutch going, hopefully again. So just real quick, I want to go over a couple things with the hex clutch. This is the one I put back together. We've got our fixed sheave, we've got our cover plate here, we've got our ramps and rollers inside there. There's a lot of pressure from the spring on this, so when you take this off, be careful that it doesn't pop off, and I think most people are aware of that. But I have I would say a clutch here that I got off a 75 Cheetah with a 340 Kawasaki. It was a parts sled, and let me tell you, this thing was pretty beat up and it wasn't even worth fixing, so it became my donor clutch for some just practicing on it and seeing what they're all about. So right away, I guess if I look at this bushing right here, and you see usually they have 3 set screws. This one already has 6 set screw grooves on there, so I'm thinking that this thing was rebuilt twice. The idea that when you inspect these to see if they're going to be any good, of course, take that cover off. There's going to be this spring under here, so be very careful when you're taking that off. I got a lot of information from Arctic Cat Chat. There was a gentleman on there, I believe his name was JMY, and Arctic Cat Chat, or just Arctic Chat. There's a forum on there, and someone had asked for hex tips, and he went and posted a thread or some information on there. I think this thread's kind of old, but this gentleman JMY on Arctic Cat Chat, he had like some 247 posts on there. Seemed like a very knowledgeable guy. So one of the first things he talked about was just inspecting this hex clutch to see if it's going to be junk or not. And well, this one's obviously junk. There was a lot of issues with it, and I just want to go through the different parts that I've discovered on here. First time working on a clutch this type. Obviously the fixed sheave, I cut that apart and I used some additional to make some tools, but this whole spider assembly comes out, and what people run into problems here is the spider is the set screws are they've got Loctite on them, or they're stuck, and so what happens is they break off and you're stuck with a spider that's not coming off. So this spider already had issues, and I had to cut it out, and you can see that set right there. It stayed in there with this. I guess I read somewhere that they said you could you know, when taking these out, to make sure you apply some heat with a heat gun to get that Loctite warmed up so they will come out easier. But just so happens to be this was a junk clutch, and I just want to show you some of those parts that people talk about. A lot of things that I learned about the rollers, the ramps and everything, and how these clutches work. I guess what people like about them is that these ramps offer a lot of different options in terms of tuning your snowmobile. So I've got this chart right here, Vintage Sleds Classifieds. They have a bunch of information there, and I had 2 clutches. Here's that 75 Cheetah, and here's the 76 Jag. So just looking at those differences and understanding how these ramps affect the snowmobile and performance is interesting. I didn't grow up with these clutches, so I don't know what exactly it means or how it's going to perform, but it's something that you can do, and I think that's one of the features of the hex clutch that some people like, is that you get lots of options for tuning it. We'll just leave it at that. Now, as far as going through and parts, they say if this spider is junk like this, then you're better off just looking for another clutch. A lot of people, you know, if you see on eBay a spider for a hex clutch, it's like $100. It's just insane. So people say that, you know, these clutches are garbage, throw them away. But when it comes to buy parts and to rebuild them, then it's all of a sudden it's real expensive. I guess that's just the nature of the beast. But I've got this right here. Just noticed some difference with this and the other clutch that I have. Very subtle, but newer style spiders have bigger rollers, and I guess you don't want to interchange those. Be careful with you know, the different hex style clutches out there. Like I said, I'd ordered some hex ramps that I thought 414s, I read somewhere, would be a good one. And the idea is that you can see right here, this newer style ramp versus this 70s style, a little bit different. So okay, I spent some money in the wrong area, but no big deal. I'll deal with that. So here we have that 290 ramp on here, and the idea is that when you inspect that, you can see right here there's some grooves. So there's obviously some time for that jag clutch, hex clutch, to be rebuilt with some new ramps. I just swapped out the 340 style. Again, for the bushings right here, that was another telltale sign that this clutch is past its prime, was just the stress fractures on there. And so again, this was not a salvageable clutch, and I just wanted to use it to show some things in terms of how that works. What I did with the fixed sheave, okay, is I made another tool that would be used to set in a new bushing. So I cut it. This was actually the fixed sheave. Just took it and put some paint on it. But the idea is that when I'm setting this on the new bushings with the clutch, that I can use this as a puller. It's real simple idea. You're just putting this there, and you've got an easy way then to tighten that thread up and actually get that bushing set in there straight. There are a couple things that I should talk about in terms of getting this thing, getting your clutch set up with a new set of bushings. Some people talked about this Duralon bushing or the new old stock, and I guess there are a couple different types out there. Not sure what's better, but I got this set up, this bushing right here, on eBay. That was what, $35 for the short style. Okay. When I was taking these out, I simply pounded those out that way because I know they were garbage, but that's how I extracted the bushings on the clutch. So if we're going to put this back together with your new bushings, there's some tips and tricks that JMY posted on Arctic Chat. The biggest thing was making sure to get them synchronized on there. So these clutches have, let's take a look here. See this line right here? There'll be a line right there. That's what we talk about synchronizing. And then on the fixed sheave, there'll be one more notch on there. You want to make sure those are all lined up. So the process, in order to get these set up, you need to synchronize the top and bottom and have your spider on there. And the whole idea is that when you're setting this new bushing in there, to apply some Loctite in there, and then to make sure they're synchronized, and then you get them pulled in evenly. It wasn't too hard. I made sure to, I took some sandpaper around here and a little bit on the bushing and got that set to about halfway before I pressed it in. As far as these set screws go, I have a couple of tips that were in there, and that was as far as using the right tap and drill to get those in, and to utilize these existing set areas right there. You got to be careful not to wreck those threads, otherwise you'd have to re-drill and perhaps make your own new set of screws in to hold this bushing in place. So it's kind of a tricky element. I did it. My only problem was I broke a tap right away. When you're working on these, the tap, I was setting that in there, and this thing just was very brittle and it broke pretty easily. So I got another one. But take your time with getting these bushings set in there and synchronized, and it's not too bad. What else do I want to go over here? I've got ramps, got my charts, got all my information from some old Arctic Cat manuals that talk about hex clutches. And it's interesting to note that even on the 78 manual, that they don't even talk about the bushing on there. That's right here, and it says if this thing was wore out, actually, to get a new cover and replace the clutch. It doesn't even mention anything on the parts list here about what's going on there. I'm sure there's some more people out there that have a lot of experience with these hex clutches, but I just wanted to share this information about rebuilding a hex clutch for a 76 Jag snowmobile. It's got a a Suzuki 275cc, so it's not a powerhouse sled or anything, but I just want to get this thing running again. Thanks for all the information online. We'll be hopefully have a good clutch here this winter, and something that I can learn a little bit more about these ramps and find out what would be a little hot setup for clutching with the hex. All right, you got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And I'm not an expert, but if someone has some ideas or help, go ahead and post it. Thank you.